All right, there we go. I don't know how many of you will be watching us this evening. I just announced this yesterday. I know some of you guys were in the Discord, but we're having a heated debate in there right now. So lots of you might catch this on VOD. I'm joined by both Nicholas and Zonalar. Nicholas for the first time, I believe.
On your channel, yes, yeah.
I believe so. He's the one who suggested this whole thing ages ago, and we finally managed to make things
I
work through the time zone.
masterminded the whole thing.
Yes, so I'll let him take it away from here. What are we talking about?
We're gonna talk about this, my man. We're gonna talk about Flesh or Pride, and I know you have one too. Where's yours?
There we go.
There you go.
Oh,
There you go.
let's want to focus on his face. There we go.
Talking
Beautiful
about
Broly.
the
Yeah,
funny
so-
Japanese cartoons.
Yes,
Exactly, because there is a big intersection with some of our hobbies, right? We both, and all three of us enjoy RPGs, and we do enjoy animes as well. And I don't know you guys, but there are a lot of elements that I find that would be cool to role playing, especially some specific battles, right? We see in anime. I think they're very cinematographic. I don't know if that's the right word to call them, but I think at least when I think of like an epic battle, I always like think of some anime scenes that come to mind. And but I think that role playing anime, or rather role playing something anime-esque or anime-ish, would be difficult, because the way anime is structured narratively is always a very tight narrative, right? That's why everything clicks together and is so enjoyable to watch. And that's a bit that goes against what we do, because we have more of a chaotic spiraling right thing where it just happens.
Right.
So we often will not have like something that came up session one, like make reference to something, way up ahead, or all those like little plot twists that click together most of the time, depending on the anime or manga, of course. And that is one of the main points I would like to discuss with you guys, especially with you, Tyler, because you do writing. Yeah. So how do you feel about that? Do you agree with my assertion?
Yeah,
that
I do. And when anime or shows in general don't do that, and they keep it kind of fast and loose, and it feels very much Deus Ex Machina. And I think it's the same in RPGs, where you'll have, when something starts going off the rails, and a GM just sort of spawns something in, and it feels like that you see people, the player characters are about to die, and the GM doesn't want them to die, so they just pop in a super powerful NPC out of nowhere. That stuff happens in anime too, but usually it's not a good thing in either of these. It's like, oh, come on, man. I think Rick said it best as like, something that makes the audience groan is what you want to avoid. I think that's a really good crossover comparison. Or hey, Big Bad. Hey, everyone else. I didn't want to interrupt Nick, but I flashed your guys up here. Yeah, I think definitely the only thing you would want to write in an RPG setting would be the tone itself, right? And be aware with kind of what you can get away with. There's kind of an expectation with anime that you can get away with crazier stuff. Space Cowboy in the Discord mentioned that, anime is not a genre. Yes, that's correct. But there are many things that link lots of stuff. You could get more specific, like, it's going to be a
accent
shonen. It's going to be a shonen, it's going to be, this sort of thing. And then there's an expectation that's like, okay, we can go kind of crazy. There's going to be lots of back and forth. Character deaths are either going to be rare and thus very very impactful when they happen, or impermanent. Think Dragon Ball Z. The deaths happen all the time, but they're very impermanent. That's the nature of the way the show is written, right? And then when you introduce that sort of concept that characters can get revived all the time, well, that just creates a new arc. That's just, and it can be kind of natural, a little bit more organic there. Hey, Elf Hunter. Everybody's pouring in.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
I have a question on what makes and a question and an answer kind of in the same
Mhm.
way, because we are doing the crossover of role playing and anime. So
Mhm.
what makes an anime unique, you know? And how can we take what is unique about anime and apply it to a role playing game? Now, I would say what makes it unique. A lot of anime, I mean, they use mangas, or they use their short stories. I don't know what they call it in Japan. I forget. Like
A
their
light novel.
light novels.
Mhm.
Yes, and they use those as like a breeding ground for designing a story. And the ones that pop off that everybody likes, that gets like Japanese mainstream,
Mhm.
which is still pretty niche. Those are the
It's
ones that get adapted. They get the studio quality of like 10, 12, 20, 30 people animating the scenes. And when you have so much time animating, it means you have a lot of time rethinking of, oh wow, we gotta spend many, many hours animating the scene. Does the scene need to exist in the anime? Now, when you're in a role-playing
Mhm.
game, you don't have that luxury of rethinking how you're gonna say what you want to say in a scene.
Mhm.
it's not curated, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
The thing with anime is that I don't know if people realize this, but it's like a pit of piranhas where they starve to death, and the piranha who eats the other ones and survives, that's the one we end up seeing, and that's with anime, right? There's a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
crap out there, and we only end up seeing the ones that work because they are
Yeah.
unique or because they have a certain
Mhm.
quality level, right?
Yeah.
We also see a lot of them that don't work, but people are so fucking in love with a certain genre they just can't stop consuming stuff.
Or they just like the character designs, but
Yeah,
nothing
there's
else is
one
good.
element that exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we can really take is the fascination with the character designs. If you look, despite how niche anime is, there's probably more like just character products. Placards, towels, figures, all of that sorts of stuff that is for these relatively niche things because the character designs are so evocative. And given that in role playing, we're only playing one character typically as a player, and it's very character driven. I think that's maybe the biggest crossover between the two is the fixation on a given character. Obviously, in anime, you have the visual design, which you can have in RPGs as well. Even if you don't have a drawing of the character, just how you describe them visually, but also
Flair.
the mannerisms, the things that you have to do, and also avoiding the things that a lot of bad or very low budget animes do. The talking head thing. There are so many mirrors that you can
Yeah.
see, right? You don't want to play a character where it's just that still image, but their mouth is moving.
The slideshow, yeah.
Right?
It's just the same 3 frames as
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
talk,
Yep.
open, close, and maybe an in between.
Right. Right.
I don't know if you guys want to like go into some tangents right now, but I want to bring back something you mentioned about death, because I think that's the biggest jump from what I'm going to say narrative wise, but I know that when we say RPGs, it's not a good word, but
Mm.
you know what,
Use
what
it.
I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So there's the main difference. Like I said, characters will rarely die, and you follow them through like many seasons, and that's part of the thing. Like you start building a social relationship with the characters in a weird way, because you
Yeah.
start learning about their life, their fears, and that is great if you manage to do that in roleplay. But you also want to have the I'll call very similar to, depending on the tone or genre, that
Mhm.
characters could die realistically.
Mhm.
Like I don't want to be Deus Ex Machina in a game as a player, but in anime sometimes that happens, and I would say that not all times it feels contrived.
Mhm. Like,
Or in a way, with anime, you have a buy-in. If you watch a certain anime, you know that goofy humor, like somebody pulling out a hammer, punching you through 2 walls, and you will be totally fine. And you watch it, you're gonna be like, "Oh, that was funny." So the same buy-in has to happen with a role-playing game,
Mhm.
where we accept like, okay, this is not a serious like gritty world, gritty game.
Right.
The realism is limited to a framework. Like the characters are real, like their emotions are real, but the physicality is gonna be over the top and almost comedic.
Yeah.
Like
Can I sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No.
Because you're giving the examples of more of the shonen style or what do they call slice of life?
Slice
Like-
of life. Yep.
But
Slice
let's
of
take
life.
something like even Berserker. Like that Guts will not randomly die. He is like the main character, right? You are. I never read it or seen, but I know you've been trained. Like characters die in the first few pages, right? Like main characters, or am I wrong?
Oh yeah. Like I mean, it's
So it trains you
Yeah.
that okay, so the side cast may die, but I don't think does it give you the idea that he could die any moment and the manga is over.
It's
I feel like-
more about the. It's almost worse that Guts can't die. It's very
Can't
much
die,
set.
okay.
It's very much set up that like life is torment. That's kind of the whole point
Mhm.
of it. Like
Yeah.
he's a very tormented character, and it's the death of characters around him is worse than him dying to him. Generally,
But that
it's
wor-
way
but
more
that
way more
works,
complicated than that. But in a
That
nutshell.
works as like anime and book more than
Yeah.
a way of role playing, right?
Yeah.
It's-
How
I
would we extract the juice to have something similar like in an RPG table? Yeah, that's what I
it's
would
not
like to get
much-
at.
Like a lot of movies and TV shows do the same, right? You have the superhero named on the title, so he's not gonna
Mhm.
die because as soon as he does, the show is over.
Right. That's it.
The show
yeah.
cannot. Yeah, that's it, and it's your main selling point. So you don't want to kill him. Now you don't have the problem in a role playing game. You can choose to like set up a death or have just get unlucky and roll with it. And role playing games they use it to have the world be dangerous. Like, oh yeah, you're dead. Make a new character, and he can try out the challenge, the dungeon, like the old style of playing role playing games.
Yeah. So NeoCal here says something that's what I was going to say that I wanted to expand on, which is why player characters have connections like superheroes in their family. Yeah, this is like the big thing with when Superman is written well. It's not about the MacGuffin kryptonite thing. Oh, now he actually can die. When he's written well, it's about can he actually solve the problem for other people, right? Is he if there's a bunch of places problems happening in different places at once, he can't be in multiple places.
It's more of the dilemma.
Yeah, more of the dilemma. The thing is creating characters with connections that are actually compelling, and I think there's two ways to go about that. You can have pre-made, so like Shadowrun has the connections thing where it's
Yes.
built into your character. You make the NPCs, or and then have them right before you even start the game, or throughout the game you could meet NPCs, and sometimes it's done really poorly in every genre. Sometimes you can tell a show is trying to force you to like a character and it's just not working. Sometimes you'll see GMs that are like, here's my NPC, please love him, and it's like, dude, get this thing away. So I think it being organic helps a lot here, where we don't have to wait weeks or months to get audience feedback of like, oh, do guys
Yes.
like that character? Do they not like that character? You can sort of see, from moment to moment, okay, the players are trying to move on. They're not focusing on this NPC anymore. Okay, well, we could kill him for shock value, and then it wouldn't really matter because the players didn't care about that character. The player characters also probably didn't care about that character. Or, the random shopkeeper NPC that you had like a name for, and that he's a shopkeeper just naturally ended up being an interesting character. Well, now you could create a real dilemma there where maybe they lose a pragmatic connection. He sold the player characters really good, good wares at cheap prices. Or it could be even more than that. It could be, this character who's become a friend to the party is now, threatened or, killed outright, killed off screen. You could do that. They come back, he's dead, and now they have a real reason to go after whoever's doing this or whatever's doing this.
Kind of go like Schrodinger's NPC, it's only important.
Yeah.
It
right.
becomes important.
Yeah.
So I think what we can take from anime is the tropes. Because the whole industry is built on like literally animating everything. You have to. They have created a lot of like shorthands of like, oh yeah, this is the tsundere character, this is the shonen protagonist, this is the childhood girlfriend. And I mean, a lot of those are tried because they are overused, but they are also used because they are effective. So as a table, you can discuss like, actually, let's lean into some of those tropes, because when everybody picks like one direction, then the inter-table party play is gonna be more interesting when we role play out the characters and how they interact. And most often what happens, you choose one direction, but then you play out the first session and you realize like a situation happens that you did not account for, and you come up with a twist on your character of, oh, that I could like have a cool reaction in this moment that would give my unique twist. And now it's no longer a trope. You no longer are cardboard cutouts.
Yeah.
You're not limited by that anymore, right? Yeah, the good animes, they do that all the time, right?
Yeah.
Initially, you see the character and you think you have this painting of it, but as the story progresses, you see, the guy is much deeper than
like it's not a very good anime, but it has some legendary scenes. Gundam Wing, which I think is probably the one that most people have seen, and it sets it up that our lead character Hiro is a spy, sort of infiltrating a high school, and you think, oh, he's gonna fall for a girl, and then the love triangle is gonna get involved, and the girl gives him an invitation to her birthday party, and he rips it up and leans in and says, "If you talk to me again, I'll kill you." It's like a total subversion of expectation, and you're like, holy shit, okay, no, this guy's a consummate professional. He's not going to let some side piece ruin the job for him. All right, and that tells you so much about the character immediately in one line of dialogue. Like,
great, man. Yeah.
Yes. I'll be better at that, especially when they're talking. So
you have to show.
Yeah, he's doing it alone. Can I do it too?
I don't know.
I don't have the power.
No, I think I'm
you need to be a collaborator, right?
Yes, yeah. I'm only second fiddle to Max, so I don't know if I can add you guys. I don't. I'll just pay attention to it.
All right.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about it, let's just bring it up. It was one of my points of how do you take the best parts of anime into role playing? Like, how do you? How can we take? Like, what makes anime good? Like, what makes us enjoy anime and take that into role play? What do you guys want to take into the games?
Well, what makes it good? I think it's a very personal one. I think it's all about taste. That's why some people hate it. You cannot not tolerate the smell of it, right? Which is fine. We all have the things we made a vow to not touch.
Well, that's okay, but it's still good in its own right. Like the best parts.
Yeah, it has merit. It has objective merit, regardless, right?
There we go.
Show me your Brazilian cartoon, Conway. Go ahead. I will wait.
We have Brother of Jor-El. That's I think a funny one. Anyhow, like characters, I think it's mostly characters. Like, there's a lot to be said about vibe and aesthetic too, which is, I think it's kind of hard to translate to RPGs. Like, I agree with Tyler that the way you role play, the way you say the character does things, like, it's flair. You can do that through description, but a lot of I'll use vibe for lack of a better word. Is very unique to how it is presented in the drawings, be it manga or anime.
I would say a lot of anime, they have like a unique like an innocence to them, because you're teleported into this cartoon world of we will not talk about what is it, like we will not talk about taxes and the mundanity of the real world. Because they're pretty much created for what, teenagers in high school trying to escape what there is to come. So
And
they lean
fatherless
so super
individuals.
heavily into escapism to the point of being literally reincarnated in another world, like a literal escapism being the most popular genre.
Let me
So-
not get bogged down into the details of what the most popular genre is, because I was like, well, I was immediately like, the two most popular anime aren't isekai. What? But yeah,
But would you still say it's like complete escapism? Like, let's
Yeah,
take
I would
you away from
agree.
this world to another one.
In a way, I would agree. I think there is a lot of that, yes. But I don't think that's what makes it good. You know, I think that's just a side effect.
Elf Hunter, just ignore Conway. He's our village troll. No, he has good things to say here. We could talk music, diegetic, non-diegetic music. I'll star that. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's a good point, because that's what I was mentioning with like vibe. Like, take JoJo. Like, I really like JoJo, but it only works because of like what moves the show is the characters, because they're very unique.
Yeah,
not
Their
only design
interaction
wise, but the way they
specifically.
talk.
Yeah,
Like their ability. A whole thing with JoJo is like, what does this next power do, and how are they gonna explore it in a very crazy and zany way? That would be very hard to come up with in an RPG session, because a lot of the ideas that they come up during the show, you can clearly see that the guy sat down and like brainstormed how to make that fight work in an entertaining way.
Yeah, I think though that if you have something that is where you have the only thing you have pre-written that's concrete is you have a power, it can do this, and then that's the limitation, and you can just think about you can just brainstorm in your head ways that that could be feasible, creative ways that you could use it, and then when you actually get to playing the game, a scenario pops up, and then now I can use it. Because one of the advantages that we have that Araki didn't is that when we're sitting at the table, there's multiple of us, right? And we just have to think about what our own character could do. So I don't think we need to pre-plan things as much as far as, and we're also not having to think about we're not necessarily having to think about long-reaching consequences of something, and having to think of retcons and reboots, like things like that. We can just play it by ear, and
And part of playing by ear, like we had a comment on from Elf Hunter, make the character, your characters as dramatic as possible. I would say this is a key part of the social contract or the role-playing game you want to play. Of like, oh yeah, let's play D&D, but we play it like an anime. So you want to play up the drama.
I want to hold
into it.
I want to hold that idea real quick, because I think Dungeons and Dragons, pretty much since 3.5, has been very anime-like, but it has not leaned into that at all, to its detriment. It doesn't really resemble Western fantasy nearly as much.
Power scale is
right.
I think it's a big one.
Yeah, the level go up, a number go up. It's a lit RPG. It's a Japanese genre, really. It's like it's very akin to.
It just feels like a designer mistake, right?
Yeah,
they balance the game, like, oh, how do we balance the game? And they added all of these numbers, but all it did was change the design from a more realistic outlook to super fantasy.
Yeah, it's big, high fantasy, crazy shit's happening. Level 1 characters are blasting beams out of their hands, and you're going like, wait a minute, this wasn't happening 20 years ago. This is a different game now. and I don't think
Yeah.
they wear their influences on their sleeves as much as they should.
I mean, the Mon class, you can make it look like a Saiyan if you wish.
Yeah, exactly.
With through key blasts and all, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. They're they're much
Yeah.
they're much less Hong Kong action movie as they were in AD&D, and much more anime now that they are now. So that's an interesting. I made a video when oh my god, how did I forget his name? Now I'm mixing up Araki Kazushi and
Hirohiko. Oh, you're talking about Akira.
Yes,
Toriyama,
Akira Toriyama. Yeah, when he died, I made a video
Okay.
on the influences that he had into
Oh yeah, I watched
Dungeons
the
and-
video.
yeah, Dungeons and Dragons, and I didn't have my thoughts super collected on at that point, but I mean, you can see lots of stuff: the power scaling, the key blast, the way lots of characters are designed, the magic items. Like the power. People often get confused as to where like the magic items and the item slot stuff sort of comes from, because it doesn't really quite resemble anything Western. But then you start looking at anime that has, the wealth of magic stuff, the Z sword, the power pole, the Senzu beans. It's all magic, right? There's all of this stuff like that is quintessentially Japanese, I guess you would say, or Chinese. I mean, we could even look at like Journey to the West, but that's beyond the scope. That's
when you're talking about the when I did the JoJo Tengen, I was thinking about leveling up, because sometimes in anime you have like a battle happening, and then like a guy is like, I'm gonna show you my secret technique, something that it was never being talked about until that
Right.
point. No, I guess he could just do that, but he did not choose to.
He chose not to. Yeah.
I guess like leveling up would be a way to mechanically explain that in World. I just have this new ability because last session I couldn't, but now I can.
Yes,
So you could bring that up in a way.
Yeah,
I
I
want to go back. Like you're talking like season 4 stuff, but what about season 1, man? When he got beat up so badly, he had to learn how to channel Hamon powers.
Yeah.
Which was such a very unique power. For some reason, now we have the superpower in the world called Hamon.
It's like Hindu spiritualism mixed with something else, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which another point of anime, they really go into like a niche, like of a theme, and explore that and add new elements. I like how it develops.
It's very interesting because we can see that a lot, specifically in JoJo, with Araki clearly taking like stuff from Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock, where it's kind of a Japanese spin on Sherlock, where he had this Bartitsu, he was taking like jujitsu and making up his own Western influenced martial art based off of it, and then it goes back the other way into into Japan. Yeah, that's an interesting point. I didn't have anything else to say on that. Just my god!
Saying the spell name from the player's handbook during roleplay is very anime. Yeah, if you're gonna play an anime, you have to choose like, okay, if it's more like a slice of life, you're probably not yelling out your combat art style
every time.
If you're playing a combat role-playing game, is I guess like my shorthand for D&D, Shadowrun, things you think, okay, we're gonna fight now. You better believe I call out my Rasengan as I shoot my mystical fireball, like energy ball at the enemy.
But you see, the thing with anime battles is that I think someone was Adam said something about, what if everybody broadcasts what they're thinking in between rounds, That's a legacy from manga, because in manga you can have like this giant blob of text, but that doesn't feel like much time has passed because you run your eyes through it, you can read it pretty quick. But when they animate it into anime, they just they don't do anything else. They just make the guy read the dialogue while like there's a slideshow going, So that is a relic from that.
Yeah, most perfectly exemplified in Hunter x Hunter, if you watch any of the combat scenes in that show, especially like the later ones, where you have like 5 episodes, just the mental battles of what's going through each character's head in like the 10-second scene of a violent actions happening. It literally becomes a D&D session at that point.
Yeah, because time dilated. That's why you have like 17 episodes for a single battle that in universe took what, like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
So that works best in like written form, the same way Dune works best as a book, because pretty much the same thing's going on. The whole book is you getting inside of into what characters are thinking, and then you go into battles, because in there's some things that happen that they need to the author needs to explain to the viewer, because there's no way to represent that in a way that makes sense. Like, the guy twisted his like little finger in such a way that created momentum. Like, you cannot just show that. You have to explain it.
You can't show it. You have to tell it. Right.
And and maybe that could work well in RPGs, because that's exactly what we do. Explain things and how they work. So on that aspect, but I would not go into like narrating their thoughts unless it's something like something that will add I don't want to say add spice, but if you add it'll make the scene more interesting, because otherwise you're just going like, man, like this guy is tough, like we don't need to do that all the time. I don't think, at least.
It's like in anime they always do the vocal voices of like while they're talking for no reason, and it feels so out of place because the frame is still, it's just the same frame. So you don't want like the players at the table to grunt while somebody's doing something.
Right. The reason that's that's going on is because you have the voice actors in the booth that usually are not seeing what's being animated, and they just kind of have to guess and give it a few takes, and we'll take that one, good enough, so it's like, it can be very disjointed. So we have the advantage in an RPG that everything's being done in situ. Don't need to be doing that.
And we can read more body language. We can see each other.
Yeah, that too.
And except with me right now, I have 2 faces. Resting bitch face and talking to you.
But something I do like about that internal monologue, though, is it can be things like if you're trying to show that a character's hurt a lot more than they are, for example. So it can be really good for showing like HP damage, especially in games where the HP is very nebulous or bloated or something like that, where it can look like you're fine, but internally, actually, I'm half dead here. I'm just barely hanging on. I'm trying to play it strong. That's a classic anime trope.
Classic shows us the frame of the guy, then like shifts to the right, fades into view his actual self. You're like,
like he's externally smiling, and then it does the fade to grayscale, and then internally he's like, wow, that fucking hurt a lot. I can't take too many more of those.
You can also have those scenes of the 120 hit points martial arts fighter, and the other guy's 8 hit point guard. He stabs him, and the spear fucking bends and flicks off his chisel's chest as he takes like 3 damage. And being able to take that luxury to describe things way more epic that they have, like any conceivable way of you're not allowed to be this cool, but it's an anime. Like we agree.
I do agree that HP is a very good way to systematize that mechanically, because at least how most people play. I know there's the whole thing with HP is not health; it's like stamina and energy. But the way most people play HP feels a lot more like how it goes in anime. You get blasted 10,000 times, and it fits well, exactly. Because in anime, like, you do get the hit, like that's something that will kill a regular person, but the guy stands up and it's like it's just a punch, as if it was just a regular punch.
Right.
Yeah, and like if it was live action, if it's live action Dragon Ball, you look at this and you think this looks disgusting.
You don't look at it.
Right. Yeah.
First thing you do.
First thing you do, you walk away. The other thing that's really good about this that I think we haven't mentioned is something we can take from anime and it's not something you want to do all the time, but about the tone, about the hit points, is having in-world numbers so you can just read the number and still be in character, right? Power level in Dragon Ball. Overlord,
yeah.
he's reading out all the buffs that he's applying to his character, and it doesn't break the immersion because that is the immersion, right? That is the character. The characters know about these things. Like I have it that usually if I'm playing something with Vancian casting, the characters in the world know what a level 3 spell is. What you're telling me, these people have, insane god level intelligence, and they couldn't create a bracket of, the spells basically fit in here. So it's totally not game breaking to have a character go, oh shit, that guy can cast 7th level spells, we better get out of here. Yeah, that's something the character would know if he knew, because that's how magic works in the world, right? But people don't play it like that. They play it as, oh, GM, is that, would I know if that's a, no, just, you know, right?
You can even lean hard into the trope of, good luck at the gym. You can lean harder into
something more productive.
If you put on some glasses, now you're the nerd guy, and you can read stats like directly. It's like watching a Beyblade episode of that one nerd dude that always explains what every Beyblade can do precisely.
There's always the narrator, right?
Yeah,
but it's because I said like they need to explain. I don't know if that would fit so in an RPG because we are already explaining things, so. Because that guy exists only, like Sakura exists only to explain what's happening for us,
That's why
originally, at least, that's the only reason she was there.
So the game master can say this NPC can do that, and he will explain to you in the world what those effects mean, because he's just that kind of like loser nerd. There's nothing else going on in his life. Or you can choose if I play a wizard or I play the nerd background. You have that anime power of you can read directly through the spells of what they do.
Yeah.
So instead of having identify as a spell that everybody can pick, you need to be a class or have the background to lean into the trope. Spell slots are in lore. Why is it called spell slots then? Why a slot? I know spells of more the ethereal nature of it's something that you speak out because words are magic. Words are magical. So it has it's not even part of D&D. It's like D&D taking from, what is it, literal magic alchemy.
Spell slots are in lore.
Yeah. As far as what a slot is, I mean,
I love mana for that case,
Yeah, I always thought of it as the way that wizards are mentally organizing things like a bookshelf. I have a slot for this book, this spell, and then once the bookcase is full, I can't put anything else in there.
I always figured that it was supposed to be just your components, because you literally burn them as
that too.
That made more sense to me.
Yeah, that's true. Also, the spell component pouch,
which is not needed for most games. Most games have you have your arcane crystal or your magic wand, and they are your focus. And D&D does that split of, you can have the component pouch and be super cool and role playing with it, but you can ignore this whole subsection of rules completely.
I know, and it's so lame when you do the coolest moments I've had have been, I'm trying to think of an anime that would tie it into this, are using the, having no spell component pouch and being stuck in a prison and need okay, I need an anchovy, I need a slice of butter. It's what are you doing? Are you making a weird recipe?
Going full MacGyver, right?
Yeah, and trying to play it off as Dr. Stone would be an example, grabbing and everyone else is what does this guy need this stuff for? And then, I could have played it up as an anime and done the internal monologue. These idiots don't realize that once I have these ingredients combined,
Great, man.
Okay. Well, there was
Hit
That's one of
locations.
those. We talked about it. No, we can talk about hit.
Yeah,
locations.
somebody, Elf Hunter asked this question, so let's not wait until he's gone to answer it. Hit locations for Gundam, starships, kaiju, etc. Yeah, so I'm wearing a Gundam shirt. Nobody can tell. It's just got a little Zaku thing on here, and then the rest is on the back.
Nice.
It's very evocative in Gundam, especially, and Robotech, Macross, all of that, where something gets shot in the cockpit or gets shot in the head, and on that particular suit, the cockpit isn't in the head, or is, and so changing areas, and you can really like the first time you see a new mech and it gets shot in the head, it can be very like tense. Of is the guy still alive in there? Was that the I don't know if that was the cockpit. I've never seen that thing before. Something that doesn't have a head and you just don't know where the cockpit is. That can be a very cool thing to play around with, even if you don't have the mechanics, even if you're just describing the shot, Zonalar, you recently watched Thunderbolt, the very first episode, or beginning of it, where he gets shot immediately and his cockpit ejects, and you're like, was that our main character? Did he just get ejected into the vacuum of space immediately? Or those are really cool scenes, or when they're fighting
locations. They're super cool because you don't know how the battle evolves. Each shot determines they shift the stakes of the game. Like you have starships shooting at each other, but your first shot takes out the shield, and the second shot takes out your life support. Yeah. Now the game is a different game that you're playing. Before you were fighting to like win the battle. Now you're fighting for your life because you're suffocating. You're on the clock.
There's a scene I love in a Zeta Gundam where he gets shot and it doesn't actually penetrate the mech, but he bangs around and he bangs his helmet into the monitor and the glass breaks. And he takes out like a little, basically a roll of space duct tape and just start. And instead of fighting back, he's like patching this up because that's the thing he's worried about. He's not worried about shooting back. I thought that was so cool. It's breaking up the combat with these other actions. So it's not just I stand here, I shoot you, your turn, you stand here, you shoot me until we're both. The hit locations help the bag of hit points problem go away. Yeah. Right.
and I do believe this is what the BattleTech role-playing game wants to be, right? And they have the role-playing game set, but they're more famous for their like war game tabletop. With like you have your squad against this squad, or binary or trinary or whatever terminology they use over there in the BattleTech lands, and you have this cool crossover of let's play out this battle and roll to hit and have cool hit locations. And you can imagine a cool battle, but it's very slow to role play out. There's a lot of math involved. It's very complicated, and you literally have your spreadsheets open.
Well, I mean, because in BattleTech, you're checking like, okay, do you have an Excel engine? Oh, you don't? Okay, so you can lose the left or right torso and still be up. All right, well, you do have an Excel, and you're like, oh, where's the sensor array here? Oh, so if you get. I think there's a critical mass of crunch that you can get with the hit locations where if it's too much, it starts to become like, it's like, okay, this is not really
collapse on itself.
Yeah, it's not really role playable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And he's disappeared. Holy crap.
I'm still here.
Yeah, what are some like anime battles that you remember, like you have in your heart? I always mentioned this one, but like for me in Naruto, Gaara versus Lee in the
that's such a good
I was rewatching the other day and I found a clip where people removed the monologue, so it's just the action scene.
That would be
like
so
4
weird.
minutes, but like it's so intense. No, it's actually, I mean, if you know what, that is the one thing that even if you don't know what's happening, you can like kind of infer, like, oh, he can control sand. Oh, he made a clone out of sand. Like you can still infer what's happening. Like 4 minutes of the battle. Like whenever I play RPGs, and especially when I have spellcasters, I always remember that, and I try to model towards that. Like that being dynamic, using the environment, and especially with co-creation, I think it really makes it possible for that kind of, or at least to get close to something like that.
Yeah, like that scene I mentioned in Zeta Gundam. It was not established at all before that it's like, oh, this space duct tape is a thing that they have. He just pulls it out from off screen, and I'm like, that's a 4D moment, It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like obviously you'd have something like that. It wouldn't this giant, billions of dollars experimental military. It wouldn't just be like, oh, your glass cracked. Well, yeah, we didn't think about that.
Did you get duct tape as you?
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Dude. Well, it turns out your thing is designed by an idiot. What is it? Episode 3 or 4 of Gundam: The Origin, where it's the first mech versus mech battle in universe, because before then it's all mechs fighting, starships and, like traditional jets, planes and stuff like that. And you can immediately see by the way that the Federation mechs move, they move like, 1960s astronauts, like, they're swimming through there and they're not graceful at all. And the guys that already have, space battle experience are just absolutely decimating them. They move so gracefully. They walk like somebody was just walking, like as if it was their own body. And that was just such a cool thing that they didn't have to say any of that. They just showed it the way that the things were moving, right?
Get in the cockpit, Tyler.
Exactly.
All right.
And
tropes.
Get on it, Elf Hunter. I'm excited.
Yeah. I guess we talked about it, but I had such a cool tagline, tropes, traps or treasure.
Okay, there you go. Got a little bit of alliteration. Is it alliteration? Am I right?
Yeah. The triple T.
Isn't alliteration just with vowels though?
No, alliteration is beginning. You're thinking assonance.
Regardless. Oh, okay, yeah. So, okay. Yeah. I always mix up them too.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I had to remember that one myself.
So what are some horrible trope examples that you think, somebody thought, I want to have more anime in my role-playing games, and they pull out this trope, and you just like grow, let your eyes roll up your head. Of like, well, please do not do this at home,
The thing, I think it goes back to this.
What makes you cringe, Nicholas? What makes you cringe?
It's because, like, if we're playing Lord of the Rings, there's no place for anime there, or anything anime inspired there. It's just the established tone.
Yeah.
Or setting. It just that's something like everybody needs to be into,
Nicholas, can we get you to work for Wizards of the Coast so that you can tell them that? But 3 years ago, because oops, they already did that. If you don't know about the Lord of the Rings, if you don't know about the Lord of the Rings anime Magic the Gathering cards, and you want to be very depressed about a company that doesn't understand its own branding. 1,000 yards. There we go. Not everything needs to be anime. Things should understand what their genre is. That's a very good one. Good God, that was
I knew of the Lord of the Rings Magic cards. It was
they're anime alt arts of a lot of them, and you're just looking and going, "What am I doing with my life?" But that was the moment where I was like, "I don't think this game's for me anymore."
I mean, this is a classic problem, right? The problem is, you're so successful, the company looks at what made the money and learn all the wrong lessons.
Right. Like, they just start checking boxes
big eyes, spunky hair.
Yeah. It's just the art style, right? There's nothing else behind it.
It's aesthetic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can die as a company and people will still roleplay, or they will come up with their own adventure tabletop game.
Oh, I'm sure. But what's another one? Dragging things out cliffhanger style. So using when the internal monologue isn't used to describe something that would be really difficult to show, or because the character's hiding something, but it's instead used to explain something that's super obvious and it's clearly just there so that they can make you come back the next week for, it's the old it's what Charles Dickens did. Charles Dickens writing was, if you don't know, Dickens he very rarely wrote books. He wrote for magazines. And that's why you'll read 10 pages of Dickens and be like, dude, get on with the point. What are you because he wanted you to stay and buy the next magazine next month. Yeah, that's
it's almost like
the flipper of novels, right?
Yeah.
In esports, you would call that like a professional esports player. That's like, I just had to. Yeah, it's called job security. You just play good enough to get hired next season.
Right.
But you don't have to improve. Don't try to break the glass ceiling.
Yeah, if you're a good GM, you shouldn't need to do any of that. You don't want to Stockholm syndrome your players, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, we are considering that you have good reactive players that will introduce elements as well. So I'm taking that for granted in this discussion.
Right.
Because co-creation, I think it shines there.
Urist, who is my friend Nathan, who we haven't seen before. Thanks for shopping in, Nathan. Make an anime and make me the self-insert, which is his very tongue-in-cheek way of saying, yeah, self-inserts are. When you have an anime that is very clearly the protagonist is a piece of cardboard, super bland. As I think it was Elf Hunter said earlier, you need the characters to be dramatic if you're going to do this tone. You don't want you can just imagine yourself in his position. Maybe if that's if you are literally role playing yourself, but don't.
This is a great point, Tyler. Yeah. The self-insert exists because the audience are like young teenagers, or they pick an audience like young girls that are into like the romance fantasies. So you have Inuyasha, and the main character is a teenage girl.
Okay, but you watch your mouth when speaking about Inuyasha.
I'm just saying, I'm speaking the truth here. Okay.
Okay.
This is the truth.
The Zonolar hot take.
I like the show. What is the hot take? The main character is the young female self-insert, just like my avatar.
Okay, she's the reincarnation of the priestess.
Her personality is like sit down every time she's upset at the slightest inconvenience.
Yeah,
forcing her like manservants to slam his head against the floor, break every bone in his body. But that's the romantic part, by the way. But
you bring up a great
point. The point I wanted to make, because I'm trying to get to this point. When you have the players at the table, they're not 15-year-old teenagers, so you don't want to lean into that trope, right? You pick the one that fits for the players, and so they have to lean into the character that they're interested in. If you try to depict the trope of I'm Ash Ketchum, it might be fun to roleplay, to imagine yourself as a 12-year-old boy on his first adventure. But you are trying to do something different than what they did when they created the anime.
Yeah, you don't just want to rehash something that's already been done. You could play in that world as new and different characters, and I mean, think about that's typically how these long-standing anime franchises work. Is I mean, hell, Ash. Speaking of Ash, they did finally retire that character. They brought new characters in, and I mean, they've been doing that for ages with spin-offs.
The strength of Pokemon are, is the creatures. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The creatures, the regions, the fashion design. If you are so inclined, you learn a lot about what they're trying to evoke with the region from that, and the music, of course. That's a really good point that you bring up, Zonolar. Anime genres are generally named after the target audience. Shonen, seinen. That's very interesting. I never really put that together. But that's another thing that you could either take as on the bad end, yeah, self-insert fantasies for the target audience. But on the other end, they know their audience. They've vetted their players, so to
Exactly.
speak. Yes.
Yeah.
There were
That's a good
most-
tie-in, man.
Yeah.
Gosh dang.
Yeah, yeah.
That degree, huh? This is no joke.
That's why they pay me the big bucks.
Yeah. But yes, before you said that, Zomar, you were talking about something else that I'm trying to stop like interrupting people. I have this bad habit. I
Oh,
don't
I do
it
too. I think
this
all
bad
literally
way.
all three of us do.
I've
Yeah, but it
embraced
was
the
something about
interruptions.
the world. Like I think that's the best way to play established settings. Just you go with the world, but do your own thing in a different. You can even go to like make your own region in that world
Mhm.
if the main region is so heavy in lore that you cannot do anything without breaking the verisimilitude of
Right.
like Dune, for example. I think it's a hard setting to play.
Yeah.
I don't think you should be in Iraqis if you play Dune. You know.
I mean,
Yeah.
with Dune, you should probably play a noble family that is not in the movies, that is like not the first book or something. Have it to be something of, oh, you're in the Dune world, but I don't know this corner. So I have the freedom to create something.
Exactly, because then you can co-create, like make your own planet and family and house.
Yeah.
So about the thing with momentum or stakes die, I think it's a good mechanic for most shonen-based RPGs because there's so much like, no, I have the upper hand. But I planted that tree last week because I knew we would fight here, and now there's a bunch of that going. So
Yep. And again, another example of something which is 13th Age, which is set up as Western, but ends up playing very, very Japanese. That and the idea that because the player characters are heroes, they never actually miss. You always do minimum 1 damage in that game because you will always at least land a grazing blow on someone. That's very anime. Like the idea that every blow is a near miss. It just opens up this tiny little cut, cuts the guy's ponytail off. That super anime.
That's awesome.
Presented as a totally Western RPG.
It's like when you like this guy's broccoli to give to kids.
Right. Yeah, and that's super interesting. Yeah, it really shows you the Sorry, Zonar, I'll let you speak, but it really shows you the shift to, even if it's unconscious, the way that fantasy as a genre has been shifting in the last 20 years away from pulp fantasy. And like I think that's why the OSR is kind of popping up, because they've noticed this more explicitly of like the fantasy now is not what it was in even the 90s. There's been a shift, like not just from the power level thing, but from the whole presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking about anime and how they do those scenes of you walk past a character, but you're like suddenly frozen in fear because characters ooze out an aura in anime. A lot of aura going on. Some of them visual, like Dragon Ball Z, when you turn Super Saiyan, your hair changes color, but there's also the lines that float out of your body. Wah! Yeah, exactly. But the ones I love that like stick in my mind as the number one example in Hunter x Hunter, when our kid, I even forget his name, like Gon or something?
Gon, yeah.
When he walks past the clown guy and he realized like, holy shit, what is this intense murderous intent of
Stone
this
Cold
guy?
Killer.
Yeah, it's like the instinct of a rabbit near a wolf. I need to freeze because if I move, he's gonna snatch me. If I move even a muscle, and I think that can help with a role-playing game when you look at somebody and you realize, holy shit, this guy has 28 hit points, because in D&D that would mean that he's level 12 or the equivalent of a level 12 character. and you can use that in a role-playing games system to acknowledge the different power levels going on.
Yeah,
of raw skill levels.
Something I've really liked about 3.5 and Pathfinder. It's going to be a lame drinking game. It's an hour in, and you've only started one shot, guys. So is the base attack bonus, because lots of people say, "Oh, it's super gamey." It just has a gamey name. All it is your skill in fighting, in hand-to-hand, in ranged combat. So I let players use it as a skill. They can roll an attack to gauge, they can roll their base attack bonus to gauge how skilled somebody is in combat, to gauge, like, just by the way they walk, the way they hold their sword, the way, that's like, that is someone who's always prepared to take somebody's head off, the way he's got his sheath just cocked at a slight angle. He looks casual to the normal observer, but actually this guy could, snap and then your head would fall off, like,
Yeah, absolutely. I like the aura is like a shortcut. Some of it is like, oh, it's mystical, but often enough it's just, you can't describe it, you can't put your finger on it, but
it's instinct, right?
See enough people, like, this guy is gonna, like, he's gonna ruin my day. But as a game master at the table, you want to avoid telling him, this guy oozes out an aura so extraordinary that you piss your pants and you freeze in place. And you think, you feel, you see, you hear, it's like all of those things. I want to be able to describe this in a way that the player realizes, holy shit, this guy will literally murder me. If I
would add sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would add to that I think, especially if we're doing the shonen thing, players should be thinking a lot more about co-creating penalties for themselves more often, because otherwise we have to go out of, like, the GM needs to, like, so this guy has a what is the thing in D&D, the presence, scary presence, what was it called?
Oh yeah, the, like, fearful presence, I think.
Yeah. Otherwise, I mean, it can be quickly said, like, it sounds lame though, like, oh,
he emanates.
Sounds very lame,
presence.
Yeah,
I think that would be like the shorthand, just to communicate the mechanic. But the player,
I think just by describing, like,
the work of
hulking massive. Sorry.
Well, I agree with your point. You still have to put in the work as a player of, how do I interpret when the game master says he oozes out like an aura of dread? And
that sounds
you
better
as a player have to be in good faith of, how does this affect me? And I need to role play it out, because a lot of players, they skip that part of role playing it out. They're like, okay, they acknowledge it, but they don't do anything about it because they're thinking about the next turn. You kind of.
Thank you.
Triple S ranked aura of dread, not me.
You bring up an interesting point there, which is that the names of things really do matter. I think that's something that you'll get
all about that.
Yeah, you'll get into the fights over people of, sub versus dub, but even in dubs, they don't translate everything, because there are some things that just sound lame in English. Like, Kaioken never gets translated. It wouldn't, like, it's just so evocative as that's what it is, right? So picking, like, a very that's my biggest issue with base attack bonus, is it is a lame name, right? Like, it doesn't, but it doesn't. It tells you very blandly what the thing is, right? It's very.
There's a whole reason that One Piece fans, like, will get angry with you if you call it season and not, like, island. The same way JoJo's fan, like, it's part is not season, because it's part of the atmosphere, of the thing. Like, changing it is wrong in a way, because it stops being the thing.
Right, and once you've described an attack or a special move like the first, 2 or 3 times, you don't need to describe it in grotesque detail the 4th
Mhm.
time that you've done it, right? Eventually
Yeah,
a character just says final flash and then it happens, and then,
Exactly.
I mean,
and then it's very,
just
very fast,
imagine.
you know?
I mean,
I think
like,
I think we could have something practical here, Nicholas. Just imagine if you named a special move for Red Bastard when you
Mhm,
are sneaking to like get a sneak attack on a guy with your
mhm.
dagger, right? And if you could have that like as a shorthand
oh,
Mm.
instead
it's
of
funny you say
describing it
that.
every
You
time.
know what? Because I was thinking about like every time I mentioned that he runs on fours and like he's like kind of like frog-esque, like
Mhm.
I've been thinking that I always describe that, but what would be a way to shorthand that? Because you guys already know,
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
do as a rat walk, I just noun myself, I don't know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, the, I mean, even in Dragon Ball, like going Super Saiyan was the whole thing, and now they just,
Mhm. Yeah,
to,
yeah,
to,
yeah,
to get some
exactly.
coffee, they can just do it,
Yeah,
because
just
they've
show,
done
don't
so
tell,
much.
yeah. And yeah, you make a good point. The anime is they noun vert they gerundize a lot. It's I mean you mentioned JoJo. That's
Uh-huh.
the whole thing.
Yes.
So you're
Exactly.
you're reading you're reading out album names. Oh yeah, Full Metal
Yeah.
Alchemist. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's a great example too. Um, eh, when you're doing that sort of stuff, yeah, of course you need to describe it at first just in an anime so that your audience understands it in a role
Mhm.
playing game so that everybody else at the table actually knows what's going on. But once you've already, seen magic missile, a little dart comes out of your hand and it strikes true and then splashes against the guy and does some damage to him. Now I know what a magic missile is, right? um,
So if you also played with the same group for more than let's say 10 sessions, right?
mm,
So you're playing with the same group with the same characters for more than 10 sessions. At the start, you're like really pushing for them. Well, describe how do you cast your like flame bolt, your icicle? How do you cast the healing word? Like describe it to me. And
mhm.
you like at my tables, how I used to play it, it always felt like drawing spaghetti out of the nose. I have to try to get the role play out of them. In the weirdest way. Yeah, that's
Yeah. Oh my god, I think everyone that has, like, naturally come to the sort of same conclusions that we have had that experience that, "What does that look like?" Yeah, and you feel like a
yeah.
therapist almost where you're like,
Mhm.
explain that, please."
How
Like,
does this make you feel? That's but so if you played for like 10 sessions or any amount of with the same characters, then people go even harder into let me just use the shorthand of attacking somebody.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's like how I've heard same OG discuss Burning Wheel. He was really into Burning Wheel. He talked about it on his Spotify podcast with Mr. Max. And and they thought it was cool for roleplay. But the more they played the Burning Wheel, the more they looked for shortcuts. And all the shortcuts was cutting out the roleplay in the game.
Yeah, yeah, the shortcuts cutting out the things that actually matter,
Mhm.
like Kingmaker says, "One thing
Yeah.
I wish D&D did better was describe how spells cast and how they may look."
Yeah,
The
that's
only
such
spell that
a.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The only
Burning
spell that has
Hands is
that is like
clear.
Burning Hands or a Fireball. It describes the little bead that, you fling out.
Mhm.
And that leads to its own problems where it's like, well, okay, if it's purely mechanical and you didn't give me enough mechanical detail, now I'm going to start asking a bunch of out of character questions.
Mhm.
That, that doesn't happen in anime. They know how it works and they just tell you how it works in grotesque
Exactly.
detail. Um, and two, you can learn so much about the character by how they, are they relaxed as they're, just waving
Mhm.
a hand across a
Yes.
field of enemies and engulfing them in flames? Is it like a lot of effort and really sharp movements, almost like they're doing, a martial arts kata as they're,
Kataya.
but the same thing is happening. You see this in Dragon Ball too, the different ways,
Mhm.
like you mentioned, a character that just, goes Super Saiyan, and he doesn't have to be, they have that whole arc, towards the end, and like into GT, which isn't canon, but not the important thing I'm talking about right now, where, they don't have, Vegeta doesn't have to get angry to go Super Saiyan anymore. It's just a thing he can do now.
Yeah.
That contrast, is it's the same ability, but it's gotten to in different ways. And now here's your second shot of the night. Pathfinder does that really well. They literally tell you there's the intangibles, role play them. But nobody does it. Granted, literally no one does it. But they tell you, your magic missile might be a necromancer might shoot out, like an ethereal skull as they cast it. I've literally never in the core book.
About that, especially since I'm writing my own thing as well. I think that unless you have as a writer, you have something really new, a new visual to bring about, you don't need to describe it. I think you just let player, your character, you add your own flair, but this is how it works in game, so you can play the thing mechanics wise.
It's difficult.
The Burning Hands things, everybody knows it.
You need the players to describing how their character does something. And a lot of players they're not playing the game for the same reasons as we do. They want to a lot of them. They like the skirmish combat game that D&D is, but then 4th edition comes out and they all reject 4th edition. So there's some weird conflict happening of they still want role play.
Right. It's what exactly is the resistance, right? That's what we're trying to get into. Yeah, and this is, but the mechanics can lend to stuff like this, right? Where they can tell you something about the tone that we're trying to get. NeoCal says that as a way of injecting that anime flavor, one of my class features makes you name your sword and refer to it only by that full name. That tells you something about the setting, and it could be something about the character. It could be the sword itself is intelligent and will refuse to work if you don't address it by its proper title. That's
refer it by its full name.
Yeah, the whole thing with names, I was gonna mention because in Dragon Ball, characters have their signature moves, and that's another big thing of anime. It's your signature move, Krillin has his solar disc, that's his main thing,
Yes.
So, I mean, in JoJo, part 3 on
it's all about your signature.
It's even more about the names,
the stance.
There are already games for that, man. I don't think we.
So, I'm telling you, those role-playing games, they are out there. But when you sit at those tables, they're still not role-playing. And now you have a bunch of nerds that you have to look at. So why?
Breathing through their mouths heavily and loudly.
People you can.
You want all the fun of going to an anime convention, but there's only 4 people there.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. Hey.
Okay.
We've got a very literal interpretation here. That's
yes.
Finishing it up because
I feel like there is I kind of want to talk about this a little bit, but there's room for role-playing games that are completely goofy. And if you have players that are I feel like there's an America and European dichotomy of overly grotesque violence isn't as accepted in Europe as in America, but overly sexual content is super taboo in America, but kind of fine in Europe. It's not that big of a deal. So you can have a role-playing table if you want to role-play it more adult and have it be less about violence, but you still need that social contract, and you still need. It's even more important to know your players in that part.
Yeah.
So when you're role-playing, you have to know the lines, right? Of what's
Yeah.
what's acceptable, what's not, and let's not fucking mess around with the lines all the time, guys.
Like if I set the tone as like, we're playing in Pokemon, when something gets, electrocuted, it's probably not going to be like a burning, twitching corpse at the end,
Yes.
end of it, right?
Yeah.
That's more the tone there. And I'd say,
It's the goofy eyeballs and it's chew, I'm
Yeah,
so down.
this is something that that both Europeans and Americans do, so I won't fault you on it, but we're really fucking big. I would say generally in the American South and Midwest, you're dead on about the differences between America and Europe. But if you go to, say, Seattle or New York, this is how
Yeah.
you get the barista coffee games where there is no violence. There's not even grotesque violence. There's like almost no conflict at all, right? So it's so really depends on where you are, but yeah,
There's a lot of like coddling of the human mind, like growing up with this. Okay, this has nothing to do with role-playing games with this generation, but it seeps through all of media of what is acceptable to show on TV. Like especially with anime, of a bunch of anime never showed up on German TV, and the ones that did, they got the censor hammer. Like very famous One Piece, Sanji the cook has a cigarette, but in the show he has a lollipop. Or Naruto, he's like full of blood, but in the show it's water dripping down. So he gets stabbed with water, and then he's suddenly dying. And you watch the anime, and you're like, "What in the heck is going on here?" It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yep. And in Yu-Gi-Oh, they just like straight cut whole episode, so it's very jarring from episode to episode. And all of the card art, even to this day, the card art in the Western version of Yu-Gi-Oh is censored from the Japanese art. That game's as old as I am. We're 27, 28 years on in Yu-Gi-Oh, and we're still censoring things from it. So that's a really good point. Is you would have to the part of the attraction of anime is the Pokemon gun, even the insane localizations, the jelly donuts, of course. So you'd really have this
jelly donuts.
This attraction to the idea that Japan does not what's the word for it? It doesn't coddle. I like that you use, but in our context, not just not coddling your players, which is bad, but not.
It very much is like anime is for adults. So if you watch it, we're gonna treat you like adults.
Yeah.
Especially if they make it for teenagers. So I feel like the best anime. Okay, they make it for teenagers, but they talk about adult topics because you want the teenagers to grow, to learn, to be invested. They don't have this separation in the creation of, because he is young, it means he must be protected from the real world because the real world will hurt them. When the philosophy that, I think, the real world will fucking hurt them if you're not ready to deal with it. When the right hook comes swinging at you, you better know how to duck, or
And I think we could look at part of that as during the same time that the guys that are writing the 70s and 80s anime and the guys that are writing the 70s and 80s American cartoons grew up in very different environments. The 50s in the United States was booming. The 50s in Japan was a post-war like roaming gangs. Like it was not a fun time to be around. It took a long time for Japan to recover from the throes of World War II.
Right. Yeah.
And so like when you get things like Gundam, Tomino has talked a lot about how growing up, post-war it was rough. It was a dangerous place to be alive. Whereas over here, there's a lot more optimism in cartoons, I think. Depending on what you look at, obviously. There's always outliers in both. Do you want to? My fiance is begging me to go get dinner, so let's. Do you want to talk about music real quick? Roll back to that, and then close. Add some closing thoughts.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
All right. So about an hour ago, right when we started, Conway said music's a big part of it. Attack on Titan has great music, even if everything else is bad. Music in RPGs is something I've yet to discuss much, though. And then we've been talking about JoJo, which is like both the non-diegetic music, the theme songs are so iconic, and there's a bunch of diegetic music themes. All of the
Yeah.
characters, stands, and even just some of the human characters are named after,
Yeah.
music. Um, yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, music is just great for setting tone, right? Because it's like flavor for your emotions, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
The only gripes I have against it is that you can go half DJ, half GM, but it takes out of your RAM, so to speak,
Mhm.
Yeah.
your mental
Mhm.
RAM,
Your
unless you
bandwidth.
have just have like a loop of a 1 hour ambience thing where it can kind of keep going.
Mhm.
Like have one like
Yep.
maybe 3 at hand. I don't know. Is it could be, but I do like to whenever I put music for myself, I do not put it for I put myself. I have a greater. I enjoy it. That does not bother me so much.
Mhm. I
But I've been doing it as a player more than as a GM though.
yeah, I
'Cause
was
it's less.
I was just about to say that is that I find it's almost better if, especially if you're playing in an online setting, for the individual players to have their own music. Like something my players have done before is make like playlists, like soundtracks for their characters, and I was like, that's so cool. So I can't remember which one of
Yeah.
my players brought that up, but he brought that up to me and was like, "Hey, this is music I listen to if I want to like get into like before we play to get into that character's headspace." I was like, "Oh, dude, that's cool. That's that's." I mean, that's just something that and some Western movies do that too. As have a movie set like Guardians of the Galaxy is probably the most famous one where it is
Yeah.
diegetic. He's listening to that soundtrack. I love that sort of stuff. That's super cool. I've thought about running a Fallout game at some point, and playing, of course, all the 40s, 50s music in there because that is diegetic. It's in world, and it really sets you. Playing Fallout. Have you ever played Fallout or like watched a stream where they don't have the radio on because they don't want to get copyright stricken?
It's so weird.
It's like it's very eerie.
It's
It's like
missing. It's
it's
Yeah. There's also just a bunch of banger music out there to evoke that sense of adventure through another world. Like all of the Zelda soundtracks are just beautiful to listen to. And
but sorry, just by
I
Elf
would-
Hunter, because you're mentioning Sonic.
Yeah.
Tyler, he will do a Sonic RPG soon. You guys just wait.
yeah, you're pinning things.
If you
on
do
me.
it, ironically or not, I want to be part of it.
Well, I'll think about it. I've literally given it no thought. You just
No, I'm just putting words in your mouth. I'm
No,
14.
but-
yourself.
I'll think
So
about it.
I still am a big fan of non-diegetic music simply because I'm like, what does its how do you describe it? Like, okay, this is what maybe it's memories, it's tied to playing video games at different ages. So like emotions and experiences are tied to the music. So when I hear the music, then the emotions get brought up. Now, in a role-playing game, this can get confusing because you don't know the emotional memories of all of your players. You play one song, and one of your players breaks down crying. It's like, that's the sound I played when my ex-girlfriend broke up with me. Now your event destroyed. Like, shit, that's not what I
That's
tried to
why I agree with Tyler. Maybe players should, if you want, you should take care of your own ambience, especially online.
But I still want to recommend, check out Outward, the video game. The official soundtrack is absolutely beautiful for open world music of exploring a fantasy world. It's pretty awesome. And that game is niche enough that you can count on your players having never heard this music before.
I have a similar one. Dungeons of Dreadmore has a fantastic, jazzy, ethereal soundtrack. Really good for dungeon delving, and it's again a fairly obscure one. So that's got some really good.
Yeah, leaning into obscure music choices to avoid pre-established like shortcuts or like connections in the brain.
Yeah,
So
connections
the
and
brains are
so
not pulled. Yeah. The key part is not getting pulled out of the scene you try
Right.
to role play.
yeah. Well,
All right.
I think that pretty much covers it. I'm sure there's more stuff we could talk about here.
Yeah,
That was a
but,
really good conversation.
we got it out of our systems though, because
Yes,
we've been,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the thing of we didn't approach like what about role playing in the Japanese tabletop role playing game, but I don't like are they any different from Western role playing games? I'd have to see it, and I'd have to hear like anybody make an argument of why they are better, like any argument.
Well, as far
I'll
as
tell
I
you
know,
what though.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was like gonna say, as far as I know, the Japanese mostly play Call of Cthulhu, so that might I don't know what that says about the quality of the. That's not popularity is not necessarily a sign that it's way better, but that strikes me as odd, right? That would be like if we were mostly playing, the most popular American game was The Dark Eye.
It feels like they take one game because it's different from other gaming experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be a reason.
Bleaknik says they're extremely different, but we did not talk about wizardry. So we've got lots of follow-up stuff. These are all good for potential next streams, right?
We didn't even talk about Shadowrun. What is this?
Hey, we did briefly. I mentioned the connections thing earlier.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Shadowrun mentioned we're safe.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me. Thank you, Nick, for being persistent and bringing up the topic. Anything else?
It was my pleasure to show up here too.
Yeah, absolutely. Always good having you.
Leave your objections in the comments so we can.
Yes. Conway, I'm expecting like a 5-paragraph essay about why anime is terrible and we shouldn't have even had this stream.
We love all of your like strong opinions about anime.
Yes. It's always good to break away from the echo chamber, even if it's just the one of you.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I am going to go grab dinner. Everybody. I hope you all will be well. I hope you'll comment on, go check Zonalar out. Go check, Nick, your channel is Atera RPG, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, go check him out. I'll link both of their channels in the description. My dog is getting up. She knows it's time. So I'll see you guys around. Thanks for watching. Take care.
See you guys.
Bye. Good night.